Um, in my opinion, gender and sexuality, in my case, are very fluid things, and a difficult thing to relate to people who may not have similar feelings to mine. So, what I'm going to say is from my perspective. I think the first time I thought a girl was pretty was around the fourth grade. So when I was about like 9 or 10. Also around this time, I saw the first ever girl with short hair, and I thought it was the coolest thing. So I went to my mom and I was like, OMG, Mom, can I cut my hair off? And she said, absolutely not. But what she did say that I could get was a horrendous bob with an undercut. But to me, that sufficed. It was very cool to me in the moment. Looking back, it was definitely something. But after a few months of like begging my mom, please, can I cut my hair? I want my hair like this, please. She finally agreed. She finally agreed to let me cut all my hair off. I remember going to school feeling great and confident and comfortable until I got to my science class that year. And a boy in my class leaned over to his friend and said something along the lines of, does she think she's a boy? Why would she cut her hair off like that? And my 10-year-old heart was hurt so badly. I went to my friends a few hours after that, and they said, are you gay? Why'd you cut your hair like that? And that was probably one of the first times I remember the word being gay used negatively. And I asked what that meant, and my other 10-year-old friends were like, oh, that means you like girls. During this time, I had a hard time understanding what was so inherently bad about liking girls. Or at least at the time, why I couldn't find girls pretty. A few years after that, and keeping my hair short, and doing the things that I wanted to, I got a girlfriend. Quickly after that, she started calling me her boyfriend. And to me, that felt weird, but equally nice. At the time, I was still using my dead name, and TikTok was getting very popular. I looked up on TikTok cool boy names, and I found Zeppelin. And I remember just being like, that's it. Like, that was the name that I was going to go by. During that year, I started to present myself more masculine and dressing more boyish, I guess. And I came out to my girlfriend and my friends, and my girlfriend told her parents. And everything was great. People were calling me using he, him pronouns and certain things like that, but I hadn't come out to my parents at the time. And it rolled around to her birthday, and her dad called my mom and called me Zeppelin. And my mom was like, she called me outside, and I remember sitting outside, and she goes, so Zeppelin. And I was like, oh no, like I'm gonna be like in so much trouble. I'm not sure where I got that idea or where that came from, but I don't know. And in the same conversation, she said, if it's not hurting yourself or someone else, I'm fine with it. And I just felt so much relief. I just was like, yes, I get to express myself. And so, you know, I felt a lot of weight being lifted off my shoulders, and I could express myself without sneaking around. And you think, oh, this is it, right? This is the end. You're wrong. I still have a page and a half. I only have a few more things to say, but a few months after that, that was when me and my girlfriend finally broke up. And it felt like the people around me were starting to not necessarily disrespect my pronouns, but they were being more like bending my boundaries that I put because my girlfriend wasn't around and she was like the main person who would correct the people on my pronouns because I was not the person who had the courage to do that. During the 7th grade, I went to my first middle school dance and I wore a suit. And it was terrible. I felt so much anxiety that all of the people that were there were looking at me because I was previously a girl wearing a suit. And that was not something that anybody else was doing. So a few times after that, I tried wearing suits to other events. And then I went to my friend and she goes, Zeppelin, with all due respect, it sounds like you just don't like wearing suits. And I said, oh, is that what that is? So the next time a formal event rolled around, I wore a dress. I did my makeup, or my sister did my makeup, and she did my hair as well. And in the moment, everybody was commenting on how pretty I was and how good I looked. I had realized that I had enjoyed that feeling 10 times more than the feeling of anxiety that I felt when I wore a suit. And now we're here. That was last year. With all this to say, I'm not necessarily confident in the way I feel or the way I was portraying myself, or the way I am portraying myself. But while writing this, I realized I had a lot more to worry about than whether I liked girls or not, or if I wanted to wear a suit or a dress. In the grand scheme of things, I will dress, act, and kiss whoever makes me feel comfortable.
Hello. My name is Arrow. I'd like to start by asking you all a question. What labels do you have? Maybe you're a painter, maybe you're pansexual, maybe you're a brother or a parent. These can be based on a lot of things. Sometimes these can be based on a role we take, our gender roles, something we do for our job, or something we do as a hobby. Sometimes they're based on your traits, like whether you're charismatic or a Ravenclaw or an ENFP. What applies to you? What words define you? Think of one or two. Okay, do you have some? All right. Everyone has some labels that define them, some boxes they fit into. As a queer person, it's usual to have some quick summary which explains your identity and experiences, mainly to people who aren't queer or genderqueer. Because anything other than being straight, cisgender, parasex, etc. isn't the standard, people need to understand easily, and having something to present when people ask, having boxes you fit into, becomes almost obligatory. Somehow this description has to be made up of a small amount of well-known labels, and it has to be digestible. If you ask, I'll say I'm queer, trans, aspec, whatever else, but I'm also so much more than that. Not in a you're more than your labels way, but at that my experiences are more than my labels. The word transgender, the word queer, they only imply some experiences. Gender and sexuality exist on a spectrum, as do so many things. If you really wanted to know my relationship to gender and orientations, it would take a lot of explaining. To an extent, everyone simplifies themselves in this way. It's how we communicate and connect. Sometimes, though, this can be limiting. People are not meant to fit into boxes, let alone stay in those forever. As the 19th century Swiss cultural historian Jacob Burckhardt said, the essence of tyranny is the denial of complexity. So many expectations are placed around what labels define us. That you have to have one career throughout your life, one lifelong partner, identify one way, be static. If those things have worked for you, that's good, that's great. But oftentimes, this isn't natural or realistic. What you're passionate about changes over time, who you are changes over time. A sentiment I hear a lot is, what if I try something and it doesn't fit me? What if I'm wrong? What if I change my mind? I know I've thought this about a number of different things. It feels like you have to find who you are and then be completely correct and stay that way forever. This feeling is unfortunately very normal, and the only way around it is to try. Regardless of how it goes, you will always come out of it knowing more about yourself. I'm not here to preach to be yourself and it'll all work out. All I'm suggesting is that you allow yourself complexity. Don't be easy to understand, don't be simple, don't box yourself in. Every moment adds depth to who you are, every experience shapes you. You do not only exist in relation to others or what you do or what you provide. Find your community, find what defines you, but be open to change. Rather than constricting yourself to a certain stereotype or archetype, find a part of you, of who you are, and explore it. It will always lead you somewhere new. It will always provide growth.
Y'all have some pretty cool youth in this congregation. I'm very grateful to the youth for being willing to co-lead a service with me. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of bravery, and I also want to say thank you to the youth leaders, Jason Fischel, Becky, Jamie, am I missing anyone? Robin. Yeah, just thank you all so much for taking care of our youth and helping them be comfortable. It's such a gift to our whole community. So I'm not going to try to follow that up with too much because it was excellent. I just want to notice what through lines we had throughout this whole service. So with our opening poem about the onion girl peeling herself to discover who she is, the song Brave, which if you're not familiar, talks about, I want to see you be brave, becoming yourself. From our story with My Shadow is Not Pink, there's a moment where the kid in that story wishes that he wasn't different, wishes that his shadow was blue. And we all have those moments too when we're discovering who we are, and we have to decide, do I want this? Am I going to allow this? Sometimes it would be easier if it was a different way, but that wonderful moment when you really accept it and when other people accept it means the world. I also want to notice that in all of these stories, words are powerful. Words are really powerful. When Zeppelin shared about the kids in their class who made little comments, that really hurt. And then when their mom, Christy, said, "So Zeppelin," and accepted them, how wonderful that made them feel. And so even for those of us who are not LGBTQ or not in any given marginalized community, the little moments of kindness we can offer really make the world better, at least for that person. I also want to emphasize that our service this week was very LGBTQ centered, as was last week. That was unintentional. That just happens to be something that feels very important to our youth. So I just want to lift that up, that if we as a congregation want more young people, we should do our own individual work to be as accepting and comfortable with pronouns and conversant with the most recent LGBTQ stuff that we can, because that's how we make them feel welcome. And if you're not sure, if you're chatting with one of our youth afterwards and you're not sure what their pronouns are, you can ask and just try to make sure you get it right. It'll mean the world to them. So, with a bit of wisdom from Arrow's piece about the fact that we need to imagine each other complexly, that complexity, recognizing nuance, and that we change over time, that we don't have to pick one identity and stick with it forever, that we all change in different ways. I just want to thank our youth for blessing us with that wisdom today. And now we will have Dave Dunkirk lead us in our closing hymn.